Welcome in. It is, I believe it's week 15 of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. It is conference championship week in college football. The slate quite small. We don't have a lot to work with, but we are here no matter what. It's Justin Walsh, Jay DeCoster, Matt Merrifield, of course, the usual suspects. Sadly, no Mike Merrifield this week. He really brought the show together last week. He will be dearly missed this week. Hopefully we can get him back at some point this year, maybe for a playoff preview. Matt, can you arrange that possibly?
I'm not sure what I was looking at the schedule. I'm not sure what the plan is for next week because technically there's only Army Navy if we're going to have a show for Army Navy but I don't think I'll be here on the 18th. We'll see. We're TBD on what but Mike, I'll be home over break for the most part. So I'm sure at some point he will rear his head and lean back into frame and from his side and give you free gambling advice. Did Duke even win last week?
No, they did not. No, I want to make that very clear. Duke did not win that game last week.
Well, if my father had a Venmo, I would give it to you so you could request the money back. But I apologize.
It's all right. With all the bad gambling advice I've given people this year, I can't make any statements there.
Yeah, Jay Walsh, after you get your triumphant victory in locks, then you just go ahead and lose last week in the lock again, which was your only loss on the week, but you still lost the lock.
We take what we can get. I'll take a 4-1 week every week you give it to me. Obviously it's not ideal that the lock of the week was the one in that 4-1. And, the streets are saying that the curse might be back. I guess we'll find out this week to see if the Jay Walsh lock of the week curse has in fact reared its ugly head again. I was hoping that the Liberty Flames had killed it, but we shall see.
And then Jay DeCoster, we'll go to you. We are recording on Wednesday night. It is currently 9:05 Eastern time. We are 10 minutes away from the biggest tip-off of the year between the DePaul Blue Demons, and they're traveling to Lubbock to take on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I know Chicago is buzzing. I saw the Blue Demons were on the front page of the newspaper today.
I did on the Chicago Sun-Times. Shout out Chris Holtman and the Demons because 8-0, and they're going to go to Lubbock and hopefully cover and even win because, the last time they played Texas Tech, they won at Wintrust Arena, and then they lost to Buffalo the next game. That is not happening this time because Chris Holtman is a real coach.
I mean, you are 100% correct there. This Blue Demon team, they may be sneaky in March. Let's just say it. They're going to be sneaky in March. When they get to MSG and they don't even play on Wednesday and they got to buy into Thursday, they're going to be sneaky. They're going to be sneaky.
Receiving votes in the AP poll for the first time in 5 years.
I mean, NIT, it's better than nothing, Jay Walsh. I mean, so Jay Walsh, we will now turn the focus to you because a lot of people today, at least when we're recording, are focused on their Spotify raps, but I'm more focused on what your Jay Walsh rankings are for this week 15 going into conference championship week.
Absolutely. As all good people should be. And I mean, we all saw what happened with the release of the committee rankings yesterday, and I'm not going to speak on that any further. Just know that these ones are, we will not make the same mistakes. So without further ado, we will get into the Jay Walsh rankings for this week. Coming in at the number 15 spot, we have Ole Miss. Number 14, we have BYU, who is kind of sneaky hanging in there with a decent strength of record. I mean, that win against SMU early in the season is looking better and better. So I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on BYU. Coming in at number 13, we have Alabama. Number 12, we have South Carolina. ahead of Alabama in these rankings. You can talk about the head-to-head, and obviously, yes, head-to-head does matter, but losing by 3 scores to a 6-6 team at home should matter as well. So we will get into that in a little bit. Number 11, we have Arizona State. Number 10, we have Indiana. 9, we have Tennessee. 8, we have SMU. Boise State coming in at number 7. Penn State at number 6. Ohio State coming in at number 5 after that disgusting loss to Michigan last week, which was honestly hilarious. Number 4, we have Georgia. Number 3, we have Texas. Number 2, we have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And as usual, our number 1 spot, the last undefeated team, we have Oregon. So getting into the matchups this week, we would have number 9, Tennessee versus number 8, Penn State, with the winner playing Oregon in the Rose Bowl. We have number 5, Notre Dame, playing against number 12, South Carolina, with the winner playing SMU in the Peach Bowl. We have number 6, Georgia, playing against number 11, Arizona State, with the winner playing Texas in the Sugar Bowl. And then we have a rematch, number 7, Ohio State, playing number 10, Indiana, with the winner playing Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. Our last 4 out are in order. Alabama, or our first 4 out, I should say, are Alabama, BYU, Ole Miss, and Miami. So without further ado, I will allow you guys to deliberate on that, get your opinions, and I will open the floor.
I mean, I guess I'll go first. I would just simply like to say, Mr. Walsh, I think you have a better grasp on the college football playoff than the committee itself does. Mr. Burt and I was it yesterday, Nick, where we were discussing how poorly run this college football playoff product is in terms of why on earth was there a show? Yeah. Why was there a show yesterday? Can somebody explain that to me? I have no reason to watch on Sunday. I know that there are 3 playoff games this weekend: Mountain West, the Big 12, and the ACC. Winner gets in, loser takes their ball and goes home. I have no other reason to watch. We know Alabama's getting in. If you think SMU is going to somehow stay in, even though, if we're being honest, the conference championship game should only be to determine who gets automatic bids and who gets the buys. Otherwise, it truly shouldn't matter. It should just be based on the 12-team regular season or 12-game regular season work. Once again, college football playoff is going to make up the rules as it goes because that's what they do. But anyways, it was very hilarious yesterday talking to my father, friend of the program, and how he was slowly processing how stupid this playoff is because of who actually gets bids, how the process works, the fact that the people making the rankings also determine who gets in. It's not like college basketball where net ranking and different things, or the fact that we don't know who's getting in until Selection Sunday. It's not the committee comes out every week in college basketball and tells us, here are all the 1 seeds, here are all the 2 seeds. They tell us the top 16 seeds in the middle of February just to give us something, and then we'll see in a month. That's how college football should do it. But anyways, that's besides the point. I like your rankings, Mr. Walsh. I think South Carolina deserves to be in. That was a gutsy win on the road. They took care of business. They deserve to be in the college football playoff after that win. There's nobody outside where I'm like, damn, they need to be in the playoff. I've been on record saying I don't think there are 12 teams worthy. And the 12 teams that you have in, I'm perfectly fine with. So you got no complaints from me. There's some fun matchups in the first round. I would swap Arizona State and Indiana, I guess, just because that would be more fun. But otherwise, and I don't want to see a repeat of a conference matchup, but otherwise, I got no complaints, sir, and you're doing the Lord's work, unlike whatever the hell is happening. And do we know where the committee meets? It's in Texas or something, right? They meet in somebody's basement.
It's somewhere in Texas, yes.
With Ward Manuel leading the helm. Gotta love that.
That guy out.
Yeah, get him out. No, I agree. Jay Walsh, you're doing great work here. This is way better than what the committee pulled out yesterday. I mean, South Carolina honestly should, they got a gutsy win against Clemson. They have played a tougher schedule, beating Texas A&M. And if it wasn't for that that game against LSU where the refs call back that pick six. South Carolina should be in the playoff. Fortunately, that's just not how it works because, fortunately, they were in the Brian Kelly's pockets, wherever you may have it. They somehow lost that game, but South Carolina should be in. Fortunately, they're not. And of course, they're going to give it to Bama. They're going to give it to Bama because it's Bama. They want the ratings. It's for the networks. I mean, let's just be honest here. I mean, they want Notre Dame versus Alabama. That's going to drive the ratings. It's going to be for the television ratings, and it's going to be fun to watch. But South Carolina does deserve to be in over Alabama right now, especially when you get curb stomped by a pretty ass Oklahoma team on the road. I mean, that's just I don't know what the committee is doing, but on that, I do agree with these rankings. Most of these make sense. Good work, Jay Walsh, as usual.
I'll close it out. I mean, I'll just say exactly what everybody else said. Jay Walsh, you do have a better grasp on this than whatever these ADs and commissioners have that they put in this committee room of what is it, like 16 selected people or something like that. I think, Matt, when we were in the discussion about it yesterday, I know the rankings aren't like truly like drastically different, but like we need to bring back the computers from the BCS. Like, I mean, what are we doing with the committee? It never felt like the computers were the rankings were the problem with the BCS. Everybody had a problem with it just being two teams. Again, I was fine with two teams, but I get it. I don't get why we had to go to this committee thing. I mean, Jay Walsh, you should be just this strict committee. I think a lot of people would rather this than what we're going to see on Sunday, because it's going to be a disaster when Clemson wins on Saturday, because Clemson's going to find a way to win just because. I don't even know if it matters who wins the Big 12 because that becomes a disaster. It really becomes a disaster if UNLV finds a way to win, because they'll find a way to drop Boise State out of the playoffs. Like, they will sink like a rock because they'll have not played anybody, which, I mean, their one loss was a last-second field goal to Oregon. But, I mean, still, they have a very good schedule. They should, both them and SMU should be in, but with a loss, they're going to be out just because that's the way the committee works, which leads me into this next question, I guess, for the whole thing, or for all of you guys, I guess. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but wouldn't it be beneficial for like an SMU, for Boise State, just not to play this weekend? I mean, because what truly is the point?
Well, go ahead, Jay Walsh.
I would say, I mean, based on the way that we know it's going to happen, absolutely it would be beneficial, because as of right now, the committee has kind of forced themselves into saying, right now, we think that an Arizona State or a Boise State or an SMU are all more deserving than the teams that they don't have in. And I literally tweeted out today, because there were people talking about how, Clemson has, control of Alabama's destiny. Like, I literally tweeted out, it's hilarious to me that people haven't seemed to grasp the concept that the committee is 100% dropping SMU below Alabama if they lose to Clemson. I mean, the committee is going to put Alabama in the playoff. Alabama is in. They are locked in, even though they absolutely should not be, but they are. And like Jay said, it's a complete ratings push. It's because they're Alabama. It's the name. Everyone wants to see them in, even though nobody really wants to see them in. And I would agree with you that the way it's currently set up, there really is no motivation for these teams to play in these games, because if they win, cool. They're going to be where they were projected to be at. If they lose, they get knocked out for a team that didn't have to play this weekend. So I really hope that we're wrong, and I hope Ward Manuel sticks to his so-called word that conference championship week will not drop teams out of the playoff in favor of teams that didn't play in conference championships, but I know it's not going to happen.
Well, like I mentioned before, of conference championships should not play a factor into whether or not you make the 12. It should only be for determining who gets a bye and who gets to make the tournament altogether. Obviously, with the top 5 conference champs, I back to the whole South Carolina Alabama thing. I truly don't understand in what way you look at those two teams and say, yes, Alabama's better. I understand they played in Tuscaloosa in the beginning of October, and Alabama won by 2 in Tuscaloosa. You play that game on a neutral field, South Carolina wins. You play that game in Columbia, South Carolina wins. I understand the game was played, but a 2-point game, that's an even football game. So, all right, that game could have gone either way. At that point, let's look at the other numbers. Bama has 2 losses to 2 teams that weren't ranked at the time and aren't ranked now. The only loss that South Carolina has that wasn't to a ranked team was LSU, who was ranked at the time and isn't ranked anymore, obviously. But everybody else, their other losses are to ranked teams. They didn't get blown out. And at the same time, they've also beaten more ranked teams in Alabama. So I truly don't know what the argument is. And if you want to go recency bias based on how they're playing the last month, South Carolina clearly is the better football team. They've been one of the best teams in the month of November. I can't get behind Alabama being in this playoff. But once again, this playoff isn't for us. It's for the average viewer who doesn't watch college football like we do, and they just want to see the Tide in as a playoff team, and maybe they can pull off something playing against Notre Dame or whoever the hell they get matched up against.
No, I mean, I would agree. It's a ratings boost. I mean, that's like Matt said, like the average Joe wants to watch Notre Dame and Alabama compared to South Carolina and Notre Dame. Like, that's just how it works. And unfortunately, that like the people who actually watch the games are going to put South Carolina and not Alabama. And like we talked about, Alabama's schedule. Losing to Oklahoma, like a pretty garbage Oklahoma team, is just doesn't cut it for me. So I mean, that's how they're going to do it, and it's still going to be a fun game. Hey, who knows? Maybe I'll make my trip to South Bend to watch Alabama. Who knows? Got some time off of work, so you might as well go catch that game. Why not? So.
I mean, it's a college football playoff game on campus. Like Jay, like you kind of got to go if that happens. Yeah. Especially like, obviously you need to stay safe, but if it's snowing, that makes it even better. I mean, that just sounds like a grand time.
I mean, how many opportunities are you going to get in your lifetime to see Alabama playing in the snow?
Not a lot.
Exactly.
Well, you got these Giants fans. Clamoring for Jalen Milroe. You get to watch firsthand why he is not your guy, but that's besides the point as well. But anyways, I would love to watch Jalen Milroe play in the snow. Even though Notre Dame would run right through Alabama, truly, I do believe Notre Dame would not have an issue. Alabama's run defense is non-existent, let alone they're going to have to try and play in the snow when it's half those players' first time seeing it. So, but anywho, if that's what the playoff wants and they want the helmet game, I guess give them the helmet game and we'll watch anyways because we're sheep. So,
and one final point, just while we're talking about Notre Dame closing out, I know the discussion like always has been like, oh, like what is student attendance going to be like with these playoff games so close to the holiday, semester over, all of that. Notre Dame pushed back their academic calendar so that students would technically still be there. Like I believe their last day of the semester would be the Friday the playoffs start. I believe Notre Dame has been pushing to have that Friday night game, which if they get that and you get a team like Alabama, I mean, you're more than likely looking at like 20-degree temperatures at night. I mean, Alabama they may crumble. They may actually crumble. Because I do not think they would be physically prepared to play in that. And I mean, obviously, you could say Notre Dame had like it's not like Notre Dame's played in it all year, but I mean, not that these kids go to class, but you still got to walk to class in the snow and the cold. You got to get used to it at some point. So it's going to be interesting to see how this actually plays out, even though we basically know it's going to end up being just some TV ratings, whatever they want for it. So given that, Jay Walsh, once again, thank you for another week of very good ratings. We will get into our preview for these conference championships. We'll start off with the Big 12 championship. I think once we get to our parlays, we all touch on all of the games at some point. So the ones that we don't go in depth on will still be mentioned. But we'll start off with the Big 12 championship. It is Iowa State going up against Arizona State. Arizona State is a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under, 49.5. Jay, we'll start with you. It seems like Arizona State is one of the more hotter teams in America right now. Do you see Iowa State finding a way to stop them in this game?
I could definitely see Iowa State win this game. Look, Arizona State's been one of the hotter teams in the country. Scadaboo's been amazing. I think he had like 1,300 yards rushing this year. Just an amazing back. And I guess for Arizona State, look, I mean, you're missing Jordan Tyson. That's one of their best receivers. He's out for this Big 12 championship, so that's kind of a pretty big loss. One of the best receivers in the Big 12. Rocco Beck, I mean, he's had a decent season, but I mean, I would take Sam Levitt in the QB matchup. I think Sam Levitt's had a very good year. I mean, Arizona State's just the hot team right now. I'd probably lean Arizona State in this spot. I would also lean the over. I got to take the hot team right now. Iowa State's a good story, but I mean, I would probably lean Arizona State in this spot. I mean, I like Scadaboo. I like their defense, so I would lean Arizona State in this spot.
Matt, we'll go to you next. As I watched DePaul miss another 3, and they are now down 12-0. Listen, Sam Levitt has had a great season, but did you know if you only donated $18.55, he may have been the starting quarterback for Michigan State this season? I mean, he
wouldn't have been. I know. You're just trying to push my buttons, and it's fine. And hey, I had somebody unironically tell me at the Impact meeting tonight, because I made a joke about how Bryce Underwood hadn't signed yet. He goes, and the person goes, maybe if we can come up with enough money, he can come here. And he was being dead serious. And it's not even the person you guys would think it would be, because he wasn't there. But anyways, I'm torn, because the more I think about it, the more I like ISU, even though I did take Arizona State in my parlay. ISU has the experience. They've been there before. I know it was with the Brock Purdy and the previous regime with Breece Hall and Charlie Kohler, but still Matt Campbell has been in the spot before. And the coach that is running for Arizona State comes from the Dan Lanning coaching tree, and I don't know how much I trust him to get it done in a big spot, just because he's never done it before. Simply, that's a little bit of a concern for me. But hey, the one thing I do like is that Arizona State still can play better. They have not been great at the end of games. They like to let teams kind of crawl back. And so I still think there's a spot where they can play better. It's not like they're playing perfect football by any stretch of the imagination. So I am going to lean Arizona State here. I mean, you're pretty much picking a winner at a 2-point spread. So I'll go Arizona State. I'll go Forks up. But I'm excited for this football game. This is the noon game on Saturday. Unfortunately, I will be calling Michigan State, Nebraska men's basketball for the first half, but I can't wait to watch the end of the second half, because this, I think, might be my favorite game of the day, truly.
And then Jay Walsh, we'll go to you last. It kind of feels like a lot of people are overlooking Iowa State, even though Iowa State has had like a fantastic season, and there's a really good chance that they could pull off the victory here and make the playoff.
Absolutely. I really do like Iowa State. For the vast majority of the season, they looked like the best team in the Big 12. Obviously, they had back-to-back hiccups against, I believe it was Kansas, and then I believe it was Texas Tech and Kansas. But as Matt said, I mean, as Matt has said multiple times, Kansas at that point was playing like the best team in the Big 12, so can't necessarily hold that against them. And the Texas Tech game you can possibly mark down to a fluke. The thing that I look at in this game, because I do agree with Matt that this is probably going to be one of, if not the most competitive games of this slate. These are two teams that I would say are very evenly matched. The things that I look at are Iowa State's pass defense is phenomenal. They are the best pass defense in the Big 12, and I think they could give Sam Levitt issues through the air. However, Iowa State is 14th in the Big 12 in rushing defense. Combine that with the fact that Arizona State has one of the most electric running backs in the country in Cam Scadaboo. I'm rolling with the Sun Devils here. I like them to cover. However, I would not necessarily be shocked to see Iowa State pull it off. But if I had to make a pick, I do like Arizona State here. But mostly, I think this is just going to be a very good game.
I personally, I love this game. I think Matt said it, Jay Welsh said it. This is most likely going to be the best game of the day. The fact it's the noon window, I don't love it. This feels like this should have been like the 8 o'clock game, but I think the Big 12 is always at noon, so it doesn't really matter. I'm pulling a Kirk Herbstreit here. I've seen all three of you pick Arizona State. Give me the Cyclones, even though I want Arizona State to win because I think they will be a more fun team to watch in their one game in the playoff when they lose to probably Georgia or whoever else they're sacrificed to. But give me Iowa State just so we can break up this Arizona State choosing here. So we'll move on to the second game of the day, and it is the SEC championship from Atlanta. It's a rematch. It's Georgia going up against Texas. Texas is a 2.5-point favorite for what is basically going to be a road game. The over-under is 49.5. Matt, we'll go to you first. Obviously, it's hard to beat a team twice in a year. Do you think Georgia can find a way to pull it off in this one, in what will basically be a home game for them, as it has been for the past however many years Alabama or Georgia has made the SEC title?
I don't think it'll be as much of a home game. I mean, obviously it's in Atlanta, but Texas fans come from all over. It's like playing the Yankees. So, and that alumni base has more than enough money to afford to go to this game. But even then, the only factor that I like in favor of Georgia is they played terrible last Friday. As we all know, probably should have lost. Shout out to the refs. We're not going to discuss what happened in that game on Friday night, but holy hell. One of our questions on the Green and White Report on Sunday was, which missed call was your favorite or made you laugh the hardest? Because there were some doozies. But anyways, that's the only thing. That's my list of positives for Georgia ends there. They know they played bad, and they'll probably come out and show up on Saturday. I love Texas in this spot. They're the second best team in the country behind Oregon. I think them and Oregon are the two best teams and have been pretty much the entire year, even with Texas's one loss in Athens. That was a game that I kind of figured that going on the road, Georgia's ready after losing to Alabama, and that went about as I expected. Texas is going to be ready. Neutral site. It's hard and almost impossible to beat a team twice in a year. Hook 'em horns. I'm assuming DePaul just hit a shot based on Nick's fist bump. But
cut the lead down to 12. It's 14-2.
Wow. Well, give me the horns. Hook 'em. I think they win. I think they win convincingly. Only 2.5. I love that. I think definitely can win this game by a field goal. So give me the horns.
Jay Walsh, we'll go to you next. Talking about that spread specifically, does that kind of seem a little bit too low for this game, given what we saw from Georgia last week?
This is a really weird game to pick because obviously with the way that the two teams have played lately, you want to take Texas in this game. However, you can't ignore the fact that Georgia absolutely slaughtered them early in the year in their place. I mean, that game was not really as close as the final score indicated. However, the one thing I will say is it kind of snowballed on Texas early. I mean, if you look back at their drive-by-drive chart, their first 6 or 7 drives of the game were punt, punt, fumble, punt, punt, fumble. I mean, it was really not good. So, I mean, I don't think that it'll be quite – obviously, it likely will not be to that same degree. But I think a lot of people are kind of forgetting the fact that obviously the win against Texas A&M last week was a good win. You win at Kyle Field. It's a good win over an at the time ranked Texas A&M. aside from that, they really haven't beaten anybody. They really haven't. Their best win aside from Texas A&M is Vanderbilt, and they won by 3. I still think they are a very good, very talented team, but I'm not ready to anoint them the second best team in the country yet. If I had to pick for this game, I probably would take them just simply because Georgia really has not been playing well. However, I do think, like Matt said, I think Georgia's going to come into this game looking to make a statement. And I think Georgia's starting to realize that obviously their backs aren't going to be against the wall because the committee and Joe Tessitore have already basically cleared their name as being locked into the playoff. I mean, Tessitore said it like 80,000 times during that game last week. But realistically, if they lose this game, there's an argument for keeping them out. They won't be left out, but there will be an argument. So I do think that they will be playing hard in this game. I do still like Texas minus the 2.5, but I don't feel great about it.
And then Jay, we'll go to you last. As Jay Walsh mentioned, Joe Tessitore said, hey, if Georgia wins this game, they are locked into the playoffs. Obviously, this game does not matter since Tessitore already made his mind up. But do you see this being, as Jay Walsh said, a prove-it game for Georgia after going through 8 overtimes last week against an okay Georgia Tech team?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia has not impressed me this year. I mean, they arguably should have lost that game with the amount of terrible calls, like Matt said. On what was your favorite call? They should have lost that game, especially with the amount of horrendous play calls that both teams had. Just absolutely crazy. No, Georgia's not impressed me this season, but it is Georgia. I feel like they get up for some of these games. I'm also going Texas as well, though. They are the best team. They are one of the best teams in the country right now. I mean, I thought Texas A&M would give them a handful, and they proved me wrong. I mean, they looked dominant out there on the road against A&M, who's A&M's they're not a bad football team, but to go in that environment and win like that and hold A&M to, they didn't even score an offensive touchdown. I mean, their defense looked dominant. It's just for Georgia's sake. I mean, look, you beat Texas at home. That's a great on the road. That's a great win, but are they going to be able to do it twice? That's going to be tough. I mean, I'm taking Texas in this game. Georgia hasn't impressed me enough to say, yeah, you're going to beat this team again. This is one of the best teams in the country twice. I just don't see it, so I will lean with Texas in the spot. Give me a very fun game. Georgia just hasn't impressed me. So,
yeah, Georgia. I mean, after last week, I felt like my mind kind of got made up after watching Georgia go to 8 overtimes and then watching Texas what they did. What I'll say was a good Texas A&M team. I mean, obviously going on the road, hostile environment, rivalry game for the first time in 13 years, that was going to have extra expectations. Texas, they look like a different team from the team Georgia beat back in October. I think this Texas team has gotten better since they lost that game. I think they needed to lose that game, just mindset-wise. And that's why I think Texas ends up winning here. I think Texas wins the SEC the first time that they have the chance to do it, just because I think they're the better team right now. I think Georgia kind of slipping a little. We saw that a lot last week. But I think Georgia will still obviously do fine in the playoff and all that. But I think Texas they find a way this week. I truly do think they can get the victory in Atlanta. So we'll move on to the next conference championship game we have here on the slate. And this and the Big 12 one are in the Mountain West, but this is a win or go home game. It is Clemson going up against SMU in Charlotte. SMU a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is 55.5. Jay Walsh, we'll go to you next. Or we'll go to you to start this one, I should say. We haven't mentioned it, but each of the Power 4 conference championships has a team that's in their first year in the conference championship game. You got Arizona State in the Big 12, Texas obviously in the SEC. You have SMU here in the ACC, and then you got Oregon in the Big 10. Do you think with how much Clemson, obviously, they have run the ACC for most of the past decade? Obviously, there were some slip-ups in there. But do you think that experience they've had in the ACC title will play a factor in this game, given that I don't even think SMU has had experience in the American title coming into this one?
I do think that will be a big part of it. I think that this game will be closer than it realistically could be, for that reason that Clemson knows what it's like to play in these games. This is like you said, this is the conference that Clemson has run for the last, I mean, obviously the last couple of years haven't been great, but they basically run the conference for the last decade. They are also, of the teams that SMU has played this year, they have not played a single opponent that is going to have the level of NFL talent that Clemson has. So this is going to be a very interesting game to see how SMU hangs with that talent. The thing that I look at in this game, and this is another one of those games that I think is going to be a very competitive game right down to the wire. I think the thing that I look at is in the games that Clemson has lost and struggled in this year, meaning they've been in games that are one score or closer than they should have been realistically. There's a pattern that has come out of those games, which is when they get held down relatively on the ground, they struggle. Meaning that when Clemson is at its best, when they are playing well, they use the run game to open things up for Cade Klubnik. When the run game isn't working and Cade's got to go out there and make a play, they tend to struggle a little bit. SMU has the best rush defense in the ACC. They give up less than 100 yards a game on the ground. Very strong against the run. Clemson is the top rushing offense in the ACC, but it's against a defense that holds their opponents to very low rushing totals. If Clemson is going to win this game, Cade Klubnik is going to have to ball out. And I don't necessarily see that happening. I do like SMU in this game, but I would take them by more if it wasn't Clemson on the other side. I think that experience and that level of talent that they have is going to keep it closer than it could be. But I still like SMU minus the 2.5 here.
Jay, we'll go to you next. As I just watched DePaul make like 3 straight threes and cut the lead to 21-18. I mean, this SMU team, they've been very good this year, obviously outside of that loss to BYU early on in the season. It feels like they've controlled most of the games they've played in. Clemson, obviously coming off that tough loss to South Carolina. Do you think that gives them extra motivation this week, just to, even though they lost, they can still say like they rescued the season with an ACC title and a college football playoff berth?
Absolutely. Even though you lose to your rival, I mean, you still have a chance to win the ACC and go to the playoff. That would, I mean, I'm sure they'll be very happy with that. But this Clemson team, I like Jay Walsh said, SMU's got the best rush defense in the ACC. It's going to be tough to put the ball in the hands of a guy that has been kind of underwhelming in college. Cade Klubnik's a decent quarterback, but he's not the 5-star that we all thought he was going to be. I don't trust putting the ball in his hands against a pretty good defense that you're just going to say, hey, go win us the game, because he just hasn't showed that in most of his college career yet. As far as SMU goes, look, they got a bunch of explosive playmakers. They're having a great season. I think almost every game they've won, it's been a pretty controlling win, except that Duke game. Other than that, they've had some pretty convincing, they've had some pretty solid wins and by a wide margin. So I will also take SMU in this game. I just think they're just too dominant up front for Clemson. I know Jay Walsh said that they're going to be playing a higher competition, more NFL players that they're ever going to see all season. I'm going to lean SMU in the spot. Pony up. They're just having a great season. They're going to get to the college football playoff and take care of a Clemson team that's just, I wouldn't say underwhelming, but they're not what they used to be. And they've dominated the ACC for years. And I don't see that happening this time. So,
Jay, as you were speaking, DePaul just tied up this game. The Blue Demons are so bad.
We are back. They're down 14-0, and now we are tied up at 21. I'm also on delay, but we are back. Let's go.
We are so back. Matt, we'll go to you next on this one. So when I was starting this with Jay Walsh, I mentioned I didn't think SMU had any experience. I completely forgot they won the American last year. Like, that just completely passed my mind. Like, I don't know how I don't remember that. They went 11-2, and people were saying they should have been the New Year's Six team instead of Liberty, which they should have been because Liberty got killed by Bo Nix. Shout out Bo Nix. That was a great game on Monday night. He killed my Browns, but I know you're wearing it, Matt. Bo Nix is just such a great football player. But we'll get back to this. SMU is going for a second straight conference title now. It's obviously a different conference now. Something they have not done since the 1981-82 seasons when they were in the Southwest Conference prior to the death penalties. So if SMU wins this, does this mean they are getting the death penalty within the next decade?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, probably not. Anyways, a couple things I want to jump in with. The last time Clemson wasn't running the ACC, it was when Browns legend Jameis Winston in Florida State was actually relevant. Shout out Florida State for having an absolute disaster of a year. SMU should not have been the group of five team representing the playoff or in the New Year's Six last year because they lost to Boston College in the Fenway Bowl. People forget that. I don't forget because I watched that game for some reason and it was horrible and it was rainy and it was wet and it was terrible. And anyways, I don't like. I think I'm going to end up taking SMU in this game. They're not part of my parlay. I don't love it, truly. But they're the better team, I think. Like they haven't dominated anybody this year for the most part. They did dominate Cal, but Cal didn't have their quarterback on Saturday. For the most part, they just kind of take care of business. Like, it's not the prettiest 60 minutes of football. They barely escaped against Nevada in week 0, which I remember. They went to overtime against Duke, who Duke had a very strong year, and year 1 under Manny Diaz. But I don't love this game, truly. I'm going to be so locked in on Penn State and Oregon. I probably will forget this game is on, and I'll just send me an email on who won and who gets to be the last team into the playoff. I truly doesn't. I don't know. This game, as much juice as like the Big 12 championship game has, and even the Mountain West championship game has, which we are not talking about, but that game is a playoff game between UNLV and Boise State, a rematch. I can't wait for that football game on Friday. This game, I got nothing. I guess I go SMU here because I agree. Cade Klubnik, I don't think is the guy, but we'll have to wait and see.
Well, I've heard all I needed to hear. I heard 3 SMUs. Give me Clemson. I don't love it because I want to see the ponies in the playoffs. I want the Pony Express running wild again. I want that money flowing, the gold Trans Ams flying on the roads again. But give me Clemson because everybody else took SMU here. Also, Matt, you mentioned it. Why, with conference championships, at least with the Power Four, why do we not split these up? Like, why doesn't the ACC go to Friday night and have that Friday night spot? The Big 12 would have the noon spot. SEC has that 3:30, 4 o'clock spot, and the Big 10 has 8. Like, what? Why are we putting?
I know.
What are we doing?
Well, I know that we're in Big Ten country, and Michigan State used to play in this game twice. But like, I don't know if I've ever watched an ACC championship game. I've never had the incentive to, even though it was Ohio State Northwestern when we knew Ohio State was going to win by 60. I have never watched an ACC championship game. It has never been an intriguing matchup. partly because in like 8 straight years or 7 years consecutive, it was Clemson or Florida State versus somebody. It was a revolving door. All 7 teams made the conference championship game 7 years in a row, which props to the Atlantic ACC, with the Coastal Conference that did that. The Atlantic Conference, the Atlantic Division, I should say. I don't know which of the 2 divisions. I just like the ACC championship game has never been enticing to me. And I know we used to make fun of the Pac-12 game for being on Friday night. The ACC should jump into that slot because Big 12 game at noon is awesome, and it's usually 2 not great teams. I think of like the Oklahoma State Baylor game, which is what this game on Saturday reminds me of with Iowa State Arizona State. It's 2 programs that have had really strong years for themselves, and honestly, this one's cooler because winner gets to get into the playoff. SEC game is the SEC game. I don't like that the Big Ten game's on CBS, but at 8 o'clock. That's gonna be weird. Also, Fox doesn't have a game this weekend. What's that about?
They have
what is Gus Johnson? What is Gus Johnson doing on Saturday night? Where are him and Joel Klatt going to go to St. Elmo's in Indianapolis for old time's sake?
No, they're going to be complaining about a fight at midfield.
Oh Jesus! Well, anyways, why Fox doesn't have a game this weekend, I don't know. But that CBS game should not be at 8 o'clock. The Big Ten should be at 3:30 on Saturday. I'll say that. But once again, Big Ten or the SEC doesn't want the SEC on, or the ESPN doesn't want the SEC and ACC on at the same time. So I give away the floor. Let's.
Yeah, we will move on to the Big Ten championship. Obviously, the conference we all care about here. It is Penn State, who at this point last weekend didn't think they would be in Indy, but crazier things happened, and here they are taking on the Oregon Ducks. Oregon, 3.5-point favorite, over under 50.5. Jada Coster, we shall start with you once again here. Like I said, Penn State at this point last week did not expect to be here. I mean, I know they obviously hoped to be here, but it was not in their hands. They are now here. I would say they're facing the toughest test they've had this year. Oregon is a better team than Ohio State, and Penn State really hasn't played anybody else. This is the toughest test Penn State will face this season.
It's going to be tough. I mean, the spread is 3.5, which is very tricky because Oregon's been dominant all season, but there have been games that Oregon have had some hiccups, like the Wisconsin game. Like he almost screwed up with Dan Lanning, almost screwed up that fake field goal. They almost tripped on themselves that game, but they were able to pull away. They were able to run away with the rest of the season. Penn State, look, I mean, they've had a great season. My apologies for my text going off again. Oh, that's the classic right there. Anyways, I don't know. Penn State they've been great. They have not shown me a lot, to be honest with you. I'm going to Oregon. I mean, once again, it's James Franklin in big games. I'm not doing it. I'm not falling for the trap. I'm not falling for the mouse trap again. This is to be the type of game. If Penn State's able to win this, it would be going to offensive coordinator Andy Mickey. We'll see what he dials up because he runs a lot of funky formations, and if they're able to dial up some good offensive plays, they'll be able to. Drew Howard can throw the ball. I think they can be able to win this game, but I'm not falling for it. I'm taking Oregon in the spot. Also, sidebar. I looked on this game. I was just looking on the ESPN app. Do you guys realize this game? You get Matt and Nick. You guys can go out in this game and buy a ticket for like $20. So,
I very much realize that. If we weren't getting a new puppy on Saturday, I would be driving to Indianapolis to watch the Oregon Ducks play in this game. I offered Matt, but then he said he had to call a basketball game, and then we were getting a puppy. So I will not be in Indianapolis. I don't know if Matt's deciding to drive down there for the fun of it, because, I mean, really we should be there supporting the narrative of Oregon Duck football. But it is kind of crazy that it's a top 5 matchup and the get-in price is like $20. It is quite insane. Matt, we'll go to you next. Or Jay, sorry.
No, I was going to say, shout out the Ohio State fans for selling all their tickets because they knew they were going to be in this game, and they had to get rid of them last minute. It's lovely.
I mean, that's probably 100% it is. Matt, we'll go to you next. We'll get into the Oregon Ducks in a second, but you mentioned, where will Gus Johnson be on Saturday? I don't know for sure, but do you know what's in the night slot for Fox that night?
Is it the UConn Gonzaga game at MSG? Or is it the following
It is
Saturday?
not. It is. That's next week. It does feature UConn, though. It is the Women's Champions Classic.
Wow. Can we get Joel there just for funsies? I don't know who their lead women's basketball analyst is, but I can't imagine Joel Klatt does a bad job talking about Paige Beckers, and Caitlin Clark will still probably come up plenty of times, at least 3 times during the broadcast. I think for this game, the one thing I just thought about just in terms of this matchup is I think it's ironic how this is the top 5 game between who likely, I mean, if Penn State does win this game, do they get the top seed? Like, I think that conversation might be had. It could be had depending on what Texas does. I think that is very much in play in this situation. But I just think it's ironic because if I told you Oregon's playing Penn State in their title game, Texas playing Georgia, you would have thought the top 5 game playing for the top seed would have been the SEC championship game. Here we are, and the SEC cannibalized itself and isn't very good. Meanwhile, the Big Ten's kind of the top teams of the Big Ten have done what the top teams do besides Michigan, and then there's Indiana for some reason. The public loves the Ducks, like 90% of the public. And it's 3.5. And that feels like the devil's number in a game that feels like an NFL game in terms of these are 2 really good, talented franchises or programs, I should say. So I'm going to take Penn State here. I don't love Oregon in this spot. I truly don't. And I think it's the boogeyman for James Franklin is Ohio State and Michigan, specifically Ohio State. And Oregon is in Ohio State. Whether they want to be, whether they're better, whether they're worse, doesn't matter. I like James Franklin here, and I feel weird saying that. I don't like. I probably should just go out and say it with my chest, and then whatever happens on Saturday happens, and then I can go back on it and say, yeah, it was wrong. James Franklin's a fraud, or I can come on here and say, I told you so. I guess that's the way I'm going to live or die here. I like Penn State here. It's not that I don't like Oregon. I think Penn State's physical enough to play with them. I think their defense is really good and it's going to be able to shut them down. And I think it'll be a lower scoring game and they'll be able to keep it within 3.5. So give me the Lions. We are.
Jay Walsh, we'll get to you right in a second, but I have to ask Matt this. Did your opinion change on the game because of what Oregon is wearing on Saturday?
No, but it only furthers my point that I don't like Oregon. Why they're wearing black with green helmets and a gray O is beyond me. First off, they should be wearing white. Penn State should be wearing their blue, but that's also besides the point. Also, James Franklin 1-0 in Big Ten title games. It was against Paul Chryst in Wisconsin. Doesn't matter. Still counts.
RIP the Big Ten West. Jay Walsh, we'll get to you now. Obviously, like Matt said, first I'll ask you, as the runner of the Jay Walsh rankings, if Penn State wins this, are they the number 1 seed?
Like Matt said, it does kind of depend on what Texas does. If they go out and blow out Georgia, it's going to be hard for Penn State to pass them. But there will definitely be a heavy conversation about it, for sure. And
then we'll just get into it, obviously. Then you get to the point where, this is a top 5 matchup. This is the best on best. Like, Ohio State hasn't looked great this season. They did almost lose to Penn State. Obviously, the scoreboard still matters, and Ohio State did win that game. But Penn State did put up a fight. And Penn State's looked good most of the year. They've looked a little bit different than the usual James Franklin teams, obviously. Still lost to Ohio State. But the other games, they usually slip up somewhere else. They didn't this year. Do you think that next slip up comes in this game? Or do you think they have a good chance in this one?
So I want to start this off by saying, Matt, I'm very angry at you that you picked Penn State here because you stole my thunder. I am 100% riding with Penn State in this game. I really like the Nittany Lions here. Their defense is phenomenal. I agree with Matt that Oregon is not going to be able to run away with this game on offense like they have in a lot of other games this year. Penn State is a team that is in the same category, not obviously in terms of the playing on the field, but in terms of the play style, is in the same category as the Michigan teams of the last 3 years, in that they are built to stay in games. You're not going to blow these teams out of the water. They play great defense. They run the ball. They're able to pass when they need to. They have NFL talent on both sides of the ball. This is going to be a dogfight, and I like Penn State. Where I will go a little bit further than Matt is, not only do I like Penn State with the number, my bold prediction is Penn State wins this game outright. I am taking the Nittany Lions. I'm taking James Franklin, even though he's allergic to winning big games. This is the kind of year that I just envision as a James Franklin wins the Big Ten kind of year. I mean, Ohio State they're good, but they're not as good as everyone thought they would be. Michigan's having a down year. This is the kind of year James Franklin steps up. And I like Penn State in this spot. I like Penn State to win this game. Whether they get into that number one rankings or not, we'll have to see what happens. But I'm rolling with the Nittany Lions here.
Well, I mean, I've heard 2 Penn State picks here, which makes me confident enough to say the Ducks win this game. Not going to say it's going to be an easy one. The Ducks are going to find a way to win this game. Dan Lanning beat his boogeyman last week, the Washington Huskies, beat them bad, smashed up one of their helmets at halftime with a sledgehammer. I don't know. The dude's kind of insane. But I think he finds a way to win. Like I said, I think this is Penn State's toughest test this year. Oregon is better than Ohio State. I've said that. Even though Ohio State was obviously going down the field that last possession, Oregon was still a better team in that game. When the perspective lines came out last week and had Ohio State in this game, Ohio State was a 3.5-point favorite. I didn't understand that because, I mean, we saw this Ohio State team. They're not good. I mean, they'll still be in the playoffs. They'll still probably do fine, but they're not the Ohio State that they usually are. So give me the Ducks in this one. It's not going to be easy, but that line's small enough that I think they cover. I love Oregon in this one. So with that being said, we will move on to our parlays. Like I said, now we'll get into those group of 5 picks because I think we cover all of them. The only one no, I think we do. I think we're good. So at top of the leaderboard, of course, is myself. So I will start off here. Yeah, thumbs down, all that, Jay Walsh. We know. I listen to the haters. Okay, Matt. We get it. As the DePaul Blue Demons are in the lead, so let's just calm down here. We'll start off Friday night. Give me Army. This is going to be a disaster because if they end up losing, they're going to lose bad. But a home underdog, give me the Black Knights. I know next week is the bigger game for them, truly, which we'll probably get into next week. But give me Army plus the 5.5 here. Tulane coming off a bad loss, too. I know Memphis is decent. It's still not a loss you should be taking at this point in the season. Second game, we're staying on Friday night. Give me Western Kentucky plus 4.5 at Jacksonville State. I think head coach Rich Rodriguez may already have his eyes back on a house in Morgantown. Give me the Hilltoppers to win this game outright. I know I'm taking the plus 4.5. Give me the Hilltoppers outright in this one. We move on to Saturday. It is the MAC championship game from Ford Field. MACtion, it's it's outstanding, of course. It is Miami, the one true Miami, not the one in Ohio, but the Red Hawks. They take on the Ohio Bobcats. Give me Miami -1.5 here. Ohio has, I believe, they have not won a MAC championship since 1968. They have played in, I believe, 5 MAC championship games, have won 0 of them. Make that 0 for 6. Give me the Red Hawks in this one. And as we move on to the last 2 picks, who had to say we had to stay with conference championship games? Give me Incarnate Word -7.5 versus Villanova. I believe it is the round of 16 in the FCS playoffs. Villanova, obviously, that's a long road trip to Texas for Villanova. Incarnate Word on the bye, too. Give me the Cardinals in that one. I think they're the Cardinals, but give me Incarnate Word in that one, -7.5. And then the late night cap. Oh, it's truly the Dome of Dreams. Give me Idaho -14.5 in the Kibbe Dome against Lehigh. That is a cross-country trip for Lehigh on a short week. I'm sure there are no direct flights from wherever Lehigh is in Pennsylvania to Moscow, Idaho. Give me the Vandals -14.5. I will be locked in on some Kibbe Dome action Saturday night. Matt, we'll move on to you. Let's get the parlays going.
First off, I would just like to acknowledge that as we're recording this, Xavier Booker has arrived and is the man in East Lansing now, as he has knocked down 3 3-pointers in this game, and he might be back.
And recorded about 5 blocks in the process.
Yes, this guy rocks. We figured it out. Anyways, to the parlay. First pick on Friday night. I'm taking Tulane -5 here. I love me the armed services, but Tulane is clearly, as DePaul knocks down a 3, I presume.
100% they just knocked down a 3. Let's go.
Anyways, roll wave. They're going to bounce back. It was a look-ahead spot because they already had their spot clinched last weekend. They get the extra day to prep. I know Army's coming off a bye because they somehow have this is a look-ahead spot for them in a conference championship game. So I like Tulane here on the road. They're 5-point favorites for a reason. I think they win this game by touchdown plus. Roll wave, give me Tulane. Second pick, really torn on this game with Boise State against UNLV. But the fact that it's at Boise and not played on a neutral site, I like Boise State here to be at home again. They hosted UNLV early in the year. They beat them by 4. It was a really tight game. And I was torn. I almost took UNLV originally, but I love Boise. I think this is one of those games where Boise comes out and wins kind of convincingly. Ashton Jeanty knows that this is his last shot at a Heisman. And these teams, like we talked about this game, I'm pretty sure on the show when they met back at the end of October. It's strength versus strength. Boise won by 5 at UNLV on a Friday night. Strength versus strength. I like Boise though here. Ashton Jeanty gets it done. The Heisman winner, and he clinches it on Friday night. Moving into Saturday at noon, I'm taking Ohio getting 2 against Miami. Vegas wants to give me points. I'll take them. These 2 teams met earlier in the year. Miami won in a close one. Miami won by 10 in Miami. This game's in Detroit. This is a game Ohio has been in before. They're an experienced team. They've played in conference championships recently, as Nick mentioned. Miami has not won a conference title in a while. I like Ohio. They get their revenge. They're playing really, really well right now. They're the hottest team in the MAC. They dominated their way through action. Their closest game in the last couple of weeks was against Toledo. They won by 17 on the road. So I think they continue to stay hot and they get the win. Literally since that game against Toledo was their closest game since they lost to Miami on October 19th.
Hey, Matt.
Moving in. Yeah.
You mentioned Miami hasn't won a conference championship in a while. They won
it
the
last
MAC
year, didn't they? I feel like I remember that happening.
Yeah.
I thought when you said it originally, I'm like, wait, I felt like they were in the game last year. Maybe they lost to Toledo and Jason Candle should have been a future Spartan. Almost future Spartan. Not should have been. But anyhow, Still give me Ohio. Give me the Bobcats +2. They can lose by 1 and still cover. Neutral site, they get their revenge. Also at noon, I'm taking Arizona State. Like I said, it's going to be a tough game, but I like the Sun Devils to get it done. And then finally, give me Texas. They're going to win this game comfortably, I believe, by multiple scores. I think 10+. I'll lay the 2.5. Even if they somehow get in a tight one and win by a field goal, I think they win this game. That's my lock of the week. Give me Texas -2.5. Those are my 5 picks of the week.
Jay Walsh, we'll go to you next. Just switching up the order just a little bit here this week. What is your parlay for the week, and who are you cursing on the lock?
Well, I made a little bit of a switch here. It's not. Most of my picks are the same as the ones that I sent to you guys earlier, but there is one pick that was switched, and it is my new lock of the week. So I am no longer cursing my first pick, which is the Boise State Broncos. I have them -3.5. I mean, not going to get super in-depth into it. Matt already talked about it. I like Boise State here against UNLV. I think, like Matt said, this is Ashton Gentry's last moment. This is his last opportunity for a true Heisman moment. And as somebody who is absolutely not financially invested in his Heisman moment, the moment that his odds went to +3,000, absolutely not invested at all. But anyway, I believe he will get it done, and I believe the Broncos will get the first round bye in the playoff. My second pick, I am going to Jacksonville State -4.5. I like them in this game. This is the Conference USA championship game. They are playing against Western Kentucky. Not a whole lot else to say here, except for the fact that I like Jacksonville State. I've bet on Conference USA games a couple times throughout this year. I really don't necessarily think Western Kentucky is all that. I like Jacksonville State -4.5 here. Moving to the American, again, a game that's been mentioned already. I love Tulane. Tulane -5.5 here. Coming off the rough loss last week when they really could have, put themselves in position for a playoff push. We already saw what they did when they played against the Service Academy earlier this year. They absolutely beat the dog shit out of Navy. And while I do think still Army is a better team than Navy, I see this game going, while maybe not quite that far, I see this game going similarly. Give me Tulane here. My fourth pick, again, where there's not a lot of games this week, so we're kind of getting repeats. I've got Ohio +1.5. I said earlier in the year when I picked them in a game, I think they're the best team in the MAC. I still think they're the best team in the MAC. Give me the Bobcats here. And my final pick, which is the one I added, and I cannot believe I forgot to mention this when we were talking about this game earlier. It is my lock of the week. Clemson SMU under 55.5. I absolutely love this line. The way I see this game going one of two ways. Either SMU hangs around in this game, in which case, like I said, if they hang around, it means they stop Clemson in the run game and Clemson struggles to score. So I think the under hits comfortably. Or Clemson uses their NFL talent to absolutely blow SMU out of the water, in which case I think the under still hits comfortably, because in that case, I think Clemson could win this game 35-10. So I love the under 55.5 here. It is my lock of the week, and those are my 5 picks. JDC, I'm coming for you in the rankings here. We are tied on wins. You are ahead of me on a technicality, seeing as you have placed 3 less bets than me this year, but I'm coming for you.
See about that. I'm trying to get over 500. It's the last week to do it. So, all right, let's go. We got to get over 500. All right, Matt, I'll let you speak.
Oh, I wanted to throw in. I'm actually a little worried about Boise State here, Jay Walsh, because first off, programming update. The Boise State game's on Fox on Friday night. So there's a chance that Gus Johnson is in Boise, Idaho, which somehow is funnier than him being at the Women's Champions Classic. But
That game
for
in
those that
Vegas?
may not remember,
Or am I wrong on that?
what'd you say?
Isn't the Mountain West Championship in Vegas, or am I wrong on that?
No, it's
No.
always at
No,
the higher rank.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because the Pac-12 is always in Vegas, or was in Vegas, RIP. But speaking of the Pac-12 championship game last year, I was very opinionated on the Heisman race. And the player I swore shouldn't win it, Jaden Daniels, didn't play in the conference championship game, got to sit at home and watch while the real rightful winner lost. And that might happen again on Friday night. I am now realizing to myself that Ashton Jeanty is sitting in the same position as a certain Oregon quarterback. And he was a favorite. Now, yes, Oregon was supposed to win that game. I guess Oregon was the underdog favorite, but I'm just realizing that we might be on a collision course for a disaster if Boise State loses this football game.
Not to postpone you even further, Jay, but I do just want to point out that the person who should have won the Heisman actually last year did in fact win that game actually. But anyway,
you know
Jay,
what? I would not have been upset had that person, had Michael Penix won, truly, because at that point, he had a great year. Was he a merchant of the fact that offense was a machine? Maybe. Jaden Daniels should not have won the Heisman, and Bo is getting his revenge in Offensive Rookie of the Year. Jay, I give you the floor.
All right. We'll get back to the Bo propaganda shortly. I got a nice 5-pack of picks here to get over 500. We're going to the Big Ten Championship. I am riding with Mr. Nick Bird here. I am taking Oregon minus 3.5. Like we said, James Franklin in big games, I don't believe it. And I don't care that he beat a Wisconsin team dating back to 2016 with Paul Chryst. This is Dan Lanning we're talking about, not Paul Chryst. I will take Oregon minus 3.5. We're going to the ACC Championship. I like the Pony Express minus 2.5 over Clemson. I was a little scared there for a second because Jay Walsh mentioned that game. I got a little scared there for a second. So I like SMU minus 2.5. I think they'll take care of business. They've had a great season. They're going to continue it against Clemson. That they've had a solid season, but they're not going to get it done against the Pony Express. We're going to SEC Championship. Like Texas to take care of business against Georgia. Been one of the best teams in the country. They don't get swept by Georgia this year. I will take Texas minus 2.5. We're going to the Sun Belt Championship, the Fun Belt Championship. Marshall's getting 5.5 at the spot at Louisiana. I like Marshall to keep it close here, maybe even win outright. The Thundering Herd, they've had a great season. 11-1 against the spread. So I like Marshall plus the 5.5. I think they can keep this close. And then Boise State minus 3.5. I will take them as well. I think that's a pretty even-keeled pick as a group here. I mean, Ashton Jeanty, last hope for him. I will take them minus 3.5 to seal the deal for the Mountain West Championship. So those are my 5 picks.
I would just like to come out here where there's a lot of slander this evening for the 1996 Saskatchewan Roughriders offensive coordinator and quarterback coach Paul Chryst. That man, I had to look up if he had a job right now. He does not. I was kind of surprised by that. I figured he would be like special assistant somewhere to, some Alabama team or something like that. Paul Chryst currently jobless. Hopefully he gets back to his roots and comes back up north. Maybe coaches, I don't know, Calgary. Or hell, I'll take him back in Regina. That's fine. We might need an offensive coordinator. So I just wanted to defend Mr. Chryst because, he did make a Big Ten championship game. So you got to give him that. That's more than a chopping merchant has done. So I don't know what he had to do with any of this, but I just had to bring him in. So that is going to wrap it up for this conference championship week preview of the Merrifield Sportsbook. Does anybody else have any parting thoughts before we leave this week?
I need to throw out there that this just needs to be said on air. I said it on Sunday. I actually did it live on the Green and White Report on Sunday. Ohio State is winning the national championship. I know we didn't discuss Ohio State, Michigan on this show. The Buckeyes are winning the national title. I hope people are prepared for this to happen. I have a futures bet on it. Be warned.
What are the
be warned.
I just wanna say that that is the only scenario in which Ryan Day will keep his job. So I hope,
and he will keep his job.
I hope for Ryan Day's sake that it happens, just simply because if it doesn't happen, he will be jobless, like Paul Christ. So
he will be jobless.
We'll
he will be on the unemployment.
It would also be the funniest scenario, the funniest finish to this season for Ohio State, and they would be put in a spot where, hey, do we keep the guy that can't beat Michigan, but he wins national titles? Who knows? Should be fun. But all I'm saying, he's 66-6 against teams not with a block M. So
I understand, but when you're the head coach of Ohio State, that game means more than everything else. You can't, and especially you can excuse the last 3 years because A, you can point to they cheated. B, you can say they were great teams. They made the playoff all 3 years. They won a national championship their last year. You can say, hey, they were great teams. There was no excuse to not win this year's game. I mean, that was just a disgusting performance from Ohio State. And the way that I saw somebody describe this, and it fits it to a T, is Jim Harbaugh got in Ryan Day's head so badly that he has convinced himself that if he can't run the ball against Michigan, he's less of a man. I mean, there's no other way to justify them not using the best wide receiver core in the country against a team without its best corner. I mean, I'm not going to get into this because I could talk for another hour about this game, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah,
my last comment would be that maybe Ryan Day just needs to skip the game next year. Let's just take a breather for 1 year. Start a global pandemic and then come back and then everything magically fixed. Now, how everything's magically fixed, who knows? That's all I got to say. And let's hope who's ready to watch a college football playoff show that doesn't really matter. It could have just been an email because we already know what's going to happen based on who wins on Saturday. Great job, guys.
I hope you're all ready for Ohio State assistant coach Stoner Callians to come around next year after that year off that you were talking about with the global pandemic to lead Ohio State to the promised land.
I mean, Matt, I think you've laid out a decent point. I mean, that is the only way. I think, honestly, I don't think Ryan Day's going to get fired. I'll say right now, I don't think he gets fired. I think he leaves for a different job. I would not be surprised by that at all. What job? I have no idea. I don't think there's anything kind of worth it open right now. But who knows? Maybe Lincoln Riley does take that UCF job and USC opens up. Who knows? Because that would be just a disaster, basically, just like it always has been. So.
Also, shout out UCF there. I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You have to respect the effort.
I'm not respecting it. I mean, that is, the LSU did it with Brian Kelly and it worked out. So, I mean, maybe it works out again. Who knows?
I think there's a little bit of a difference between UCF and LSU as programs, but I get your point.
Yeah, still. So on Sunday, it is once again, it is still a 4-hour show somehow, some way. It is still a 4-hour show. I'm really interested to see how they break it down this year because with the 4 team, it was always they do the bracket at 10:30 or 12:30, and then you wouldn't get the rest of the New Year's 6 games until like 3 o'clock. Are they just going to spread out the bracket for 4 hours? Like, I sure to God hope not, because that would just be an absolute disaster for TV ratings. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, or no, never mind. I'm wrong. I was going to say UConn, Texas is that night, but it is not. That's a different day.
They're going to announce one team every 15 minutes.
God, that I can't wait. That's just going to be the worst television of all time.
Can we get Greg Gumbel? Let's go out to the West region.
Yanks. The 4 seed,
Number 1
Boise
overall
State,
Oregon Ducks. They'll play in the play-in game between Clemson and SMU.
Oh, okay. So I was
what?
wrong. The UConn game is on Sunday. So shout out. That I believe that does follow right after the playoff show that ends at 4:00. So make sure you get your UConn Husky fix in when they travel to Austin to take on the Longhorns. Because
Now,
I'm sure.
Quick question. If they lose that game, is Dan Hurley going to promise to never play road non-conference games again?
No, he wants to play home and homes. I mean, it doesn't matter. You win better in games like those.
I'm just saying he seems to have an issue with if his team loses games, he likes to take his ball and go home. Again, that's a topic I could talk about for a while, but we're kind of running long here, so I'll let you finish up.
Yeah, Jay Walsh, we'll get into it when we hit post show because I do have a lot of words on it. But we'll get into that post show. Nobody wants to hear that right now. As we hit the hour and 21-minute mark. My camera died 10 minutes ago. Working off the FaceTime camera now, and it looks absolutely awful. So we are just going to wrap it up here for this conference championship preview. I know Matt questioned it. I mean, I'm planning on being back next week. We'll do an Army-Navy preview. We'll look back at our predictions from the beginning of the season. I believe whatever the new name for the Camellia Bowl is also on Army-Navy Day. It's Western Michigan and South Alabama. We'll preview that. Why not? Also Heisman ceremony. So, we'll do all that next week. We'll be back next week. You guys do not have to worry. So thank you so much for watching this episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. If you are just stumbling across this, make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. Check out the channel, Top of the Perch. It's something right now. When you see this, Tottenham will already played Bournemouth on Thursday. That should be a thrilling one. I can't wait to lose that one. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. We will see you again next week for another episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show.